This is the second version of the Weave Cube. It's a sticker-modded Rubik's Cube that has, you guessed it, a woven pattern all over the puzzle. Let's check it out. If you've been with the channel for a while, you might know that I usually draft puzzle designs on Paint 3D. But I'd like to try something new, which is creating the draft on a tablet instead. I made this template, but since this won't be a 3D model, I labeled the faces so I know where things would go, just to make sure that the faces make sense with one another. So, the basic idea for this puzzle is to have some lines going from one face to another and to have them weave through each other in the process. So, we start with some faint lines with colors that are easy to distinguish from one another, kind of just to plan out where things will go. This doesn't mean we're really making an orange and purple puzzle. Once everything has been laid out, we retrace these lines, and this time we're figuring out how the weaving pattern goes. As you can see, we're tracing the lines that divide the faces of the cube, but as you know, we're not really stickering those gaps, we're stickering the facelets. Later on, we'll explore how that works. And lastly, we're adding these lines to the edges of the cube while also taking note of how the orange and purple lines will weave through these green frames. Next up is the actual design. We start with creating a framework for where all the lines in the design would go. We'll have lines around the cuts of the puzzle and of course the lines around the face as well. Then we can start following the pattern we drafted. I'm using orange and purple here to keep track of the lines from the draft, but I used blue instead of the green just because it's a bit easier on the eyes. The plain shapes look a bit boring though, so I added some outlines that are consistent with the borders of the facelets. This meant that I can't really cheat with how the shapes are overlapping each other in the weaving pattern, so some adjustments had to be made. Then I also thought the puzzle would look better with less pointy corners, so I adjusted the roundness of the shapes, and after some more tiny changes to make everything look seamless, it was time to figure out the colors for this puzzle. We're using a blue force cube for this project, and I was thinking a monotone color scheme might look good. So here are some experiments with the color palette, and eventually we end up with this color scheme, and then our next step is printing and building the sticker mod. If you want to try making this cube on your own, a free downloadable version of this design can be found on the Custom Cuber Discord. Link is in the description below. This is also available in several other color schemes, including a blank version that you can recolor on your own. And all of these are available to my Patreon members. So if you'd like to check them out and support the channel in the process too, head on over to the Patreon link in the description below. Patreon members get access to all versions of Custom Cuber designs, as well as behind-the-scenes posts showing my puzzle-making process. It's also the best way to support the channel as we make more puzzles together. Now, let's check out this new cube. I mentioned earlier in the video that this is the second Weave Cube. We've had the first one about 2 years ago, and it explores a slightly different approach to solving a 3x3 because it requires you to orient centers and figure out what belongs to which face by dealing with pairs of colors. In this second version, we still need to orient the centers to solve the puzzle, but figuring out where things go might be a bit more difficult because we have one color scheme that applies to the whole cube. This means we have a lot of very similar looking pieces, so solving this requires some logical thinking aside from knowing the basic 3x3 algorithms. And that's it for now for the second version of the Weave Cube. What do you think of this puzzle? Make sure to let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you want to check out another puzzle, click the video on your screen right now.